Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I'm your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you guys here joining me on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Wow, March 24th, 2026, and we are live. So good to have all of you joining with me here today. Please go ahead and give a like to the stream if you guys have not already. And also, if you like to, you guys can also subscribe to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com. Gives you email notifications whenever I go live, upload clips, or write any articles. Also, if you guys have any questions, if you guys would like to ask for me to give you a video response, or if you guys would like me to react to a video, you guys can do that through QBounty at qbounty.com/JBFont. So you guys have that there. Good to see every single person that is watching live, YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, and Kick. We are going to be getting deep into these stories that we have today. But first, I want to say hello to everybody that's in the chat and give some shout outs, and then we shall get into the show. So let's do it with a quickness. All right. So we have Edward coming in saying, hey, Jay. Good. Hey, JB. Good to see you. Edward also says Trump and Israel just attacked Iran's power grid when he said that Trump was doing a 5-day ceasefire. He acts like a WWE heel. The WWE is his delusional world. Look, there's a lot going on, and it is changing day by day. And I'm just learning new stuff like right before I go live. And so it is crazy. I have a particular point that I want to make, especially in regards to our food. I think that's going to be a huge factor in regards to this war with Iran. So we're going to be getting into that as well. Zero says, I think you mistyped something, JB. A court-ordered what? Right? Says a C-section, as a C-section baby. That is effing ridiculous. The doctors should make that decision, not a judge. We'll get into that because here's the thing. There is some gray area. At the same time, I will be honest with you, this one threw me for a loop when I saw this. And the crazy part is this story is out of my own state, Florida. So we're going to be getting into that. So good to see you, Zero. Ivory says, hello, JB and chat family. Good to see you already in here, Ivory. We have Holly saying, hi, JB. Hi, Holly. Good to see you in here. All right. So what are we going to do today? We're going to actually take a look at the thumbnail, and we're going to be talking about showing you guys a preview of what we're going to be talking about today. These are stories that there's a bunch of other stories that I want to talk about, and I'll probably make clips of those, but these are the ones that I said, okay, let me do these for the live stream. And so I want to get into these right here. And here are the thumbnails we're going to be getting into. Later in the show, my mistake, I left that up there. All right. Later in the show, we're going to be talking about strong talks. We're going to be talking about why and how Trump blinked and now he's lying. So we're going to be talking about that, especially in this war of attrition with Iran. We're also going to be talking about a housing fall in Orlando, the city where I reside. We're going to be talking about a affordable housing shortage. We're going to be getting into that because this is something that a lot of people aren't talking about, and it's going to leave a lot of people, particularly working class and poor people, in the lurch. So we're going to be getting into that. But first, we're going to be talking about overreach or justified. We're going to be talking about court-ordered C-section. So we're going to be getting into that right here and right now. Let's get into this story. Forced C-sections. We're going to be getting into this here. You know, it's crazy in here out of Florida because there's so many stories that happen when it comes to, Florida man this and Florida man that. You just take a look at the news. Well, what about the people who are elected or appointed to run our state, right? Do we talk about them in that way? And one of the reasons why I asked that question is because there are some things that we think that we have power over, but then when we look, and if you're in the state of Florida, you realize, wait, we don't have power over our own bodies. And then on top of it, it's the degree in which they go to the lengths to stop you from having any type of autonomy. And so this is kind of a gray area in some ways because I see exactly what they mean, but at the same time, it's like, wait a minute. I thought this was supposed to be the state of bodily autonomy. Look at what we went through just through the pandemic, right? So we get into that. And so there's an article that recently came out of ProPublica that I do want to get into. And this article was explosive. And the best part about this is I actually got a video of the author of this article talking about the story herself. So we're going to be sharing this right here. So let me share with you guys this story about a forced C-section from this woman. This is out of ProPublica. It says, they didn't want to have a C-section. A judge would decide how they gave birth. How? So we're going to be talking about this. And this came out just 10 days ago, right? It says, Charisse Doyle was in labor in 2024 when the hospital sought an emergency hearing to force her to have a C-section. Doyle, who was a professional birthing doula, now focuses more on providing postpartum depression resources. I don't think I will ever attend another birth as a doula. It is too traumatizing for me. And so I'm going to be sharing this article with you guys. But I think it would probably be best if we actually went over the video itself because, I think it's better coming that way. But let me share with you guys the video because I think this is it's unconscionable, so let's go over this. So this is from First Coast Connect, and they're talking about the court-ordered C-sections that are pushed on women in Florida if they're trying to give birth. So let's get into it.
Amy Yurkinen is a criminal justice and reproductive health reporter at ProPublica. Her new story is titled, They Didn't Want to Have C-Sections. A Judge Would Decide How They Gave Birth. She joins us now. Amy, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So this is a 3,500-word story. It is deeply reported, and I know it took you some time. But I want to start where you did in 2024 in downtown Jacksonville in a hospital room. Can you tell us basically how you begin this story of Charisse Doyle?
Yeah, so this story came to my attention actually late last year. So it was a fairly quicker investigation for us, but this was brought to my attention. I've done a lot of work on personhood and on laws criminalizing pregnant women. And so some of the advocates, some of the attorneys that I've worked with in the past, including Pregnancy Justice and If, When, How, brought to my attention a couple of cases in Florida involving women who had been in labor and actually been sort of brought into court hearings in the middle of their labor, which was just shocking to me. It's something I'd never heard of, didn't know it was possible, even though I've covered these issues now for years. So
hang on, let's stop right there for a second. Court hearings while you're in labor. Does that sound weird and wild to you? You're literally in court via video with a judge about your care while you're in labor. This is new to me. Look, right? I'm a male. I don't have a uterus, and so I don't know about these things. And even then, I'm a gay guy, so I don't have a girlfriend. I don't have a wife. And so for all this, I'm finding these things out through news like this. So for me, I'm like, wait a minute. This isn't a court hearing before you go into labor or after you've had the baby. This is while you're in the hospital room in labor and delivery. And there's a judge in front of you. This is a wild story. And so let's continue on. I was lost for words.
I became aware of this with Charisse. Basically, what happened with her is she was laboring at a hospital in downtown Jacksonville and had thought that basically she and the doctors had agreed to allow a trial of labor after cesarean section. She had 3 prior C-sections. But all of a sudden, the nurses come in, they bring in a bed sheet, and they tell Charisse, cover up, you're going to be in a hearing. And she's just shocked. They kind of wheeled a tablet into her room. There's a judge on the screen, and all of a sudden she's in a hearing, and she just really had no idea. She, according to Charisse, had basically minutes to prepare for this.
And so she is in active labor. She is in a hospital bed and in a gown and is handed this tablet. You actually obtained the Zoom recording of that hearing. Let's watch a little bit of it, and then I want to ask you about it.
Okay.
It's a real judge, Yes. I wasn't being hyperbolic. It's a real judge. Let me get the. Nah, this is the craziest thing I ever seen.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I know you may be able to see me on your screen in just a second here. I'll introduce myself. I do see you on. Can you hear me okay, ma'am?
Oh, yes, sir. I can hear you perfectly fine.
Okay, first of all, what is one thing that you notice about that entire situation? Let me go back just a little bit so you guys can see on the screen exactly what's going on. What is one thing that you guys notice that is apparent among this entire screen? Go ahead, take a look, take a few seconds to absorb it in. What is one thing you notice about the entire panel that is on that screen? Some people may get mad at me for pointing this out, but it is what it is, and I'm going to talk about it because I don't care. Anybody got any idea what is so interesting about this entire screen? About all these people? Bam! Roger got it. There's only one black person in that entire screen, right? And that's the woman about to give birth. She is surrounded by all white people or people that pass for white. So we're not only talking about a bodily autonomy issue, but we're also talking about a race issue. And as I go forward, as you watch this, we're also going to get into the class issue too, because this also has to do with class as well. But this is a bodily autonomy, race, and class issue all rolled up in one. And you see all these white people, including a white judge, talking to this woman while she's in active labor and basically saying, you better have this C-section. You better not give a natural birth. You better have a C-section. Now, I'm going to get more into the details as to why, and it's actually covered more in the article as to why, but I would like for you guys to notice, like, wait, what's going on here? Because one of my issues is, it's not just that she's a woman in labor and then they're trying to force her to have a medical procedure that she may not want. But on top of that, it is that they are quick to do it with black women because their autonomy is seen as even less valid than a white woman's. I'm gonna put it out there. Let's be real. Let's keep it a buck, right? Yes, women's autonomy and misogyny within the medical field is definitely apparent. However, there are also levels to this. And I want people to realize that there's levels to this, right? Because who has the most autonomy? A rich white woman. Who has less autonomy than her, but has a little bit more autonomy than other people? A working class white woman. Who has a little bit less autonomy than her? What? Black women, right? And they're usually at the bottom of the ladder. And so I'm being real with you. That's also something that I find that's apparent in this. Actually, no, there are women in there. You have 1, to 3 women. There's 3 women present, but they're all white. That's also another thing. You know what I mean? And so, unfortunately, because of how a black women are treated within the medical field, there are also higher rates for mortality when it comes to black women, especially in regards to childbirth. And that's not me giving an opinion. That is straight facts. And that's the part that is scary to me. And it's like what Laverne the Baseman said. You know, a doctor is to a black woman what a police is to a black man. And that's how it is in this system. And that it is created to be this way. The system not broken. This is not a broken system. The system is designed this way. This is why the system needs to be dismantled. Reform will not fix this. You cannot reform this. And this is why I'm talking about this the way I am. And it also angers me, the fact that somebody is subject to this while they're in labor as under a court order, instead of this being chosen between her and her doctors. Let's continue on.
Can you hear me okay, ma'am?
Oh, yes.
Yes, sir. I can hear you perfectly fine.
So that is a screen. As you note in your story, there's a lot of faces on that screen. There's representatives of the state attorney's office, the judge. There's doctors involved who are interested in a C-section, in this case, making that argument. But what there isn't there, aside from Ms. Doyley, is any representation for her. There's no lawyer, there's no advocate for her, and she is essentially representing herself in this case. Why is that?
Yeah, so I think that's a really important point here, and raises some fairly important due process issues. Basically, Florida has established that hospitals can reach out to the state attorney in cases like this. The state attorney has to make the case before a judge that a C-section is needed or another type of intervention. And the state has determined that women are not entitled to any kind of counsel because these are emergency hearings. They happen very quickly. Basically, the state has said that it's just, it would be too difficult to get an attorney for the women. Charisse brought it up several times in her hearing that she wanted a lawyer and she wanted to talk with her own attorney. She even asked for an advocate, a patient advocate from the hospital. That was never provided to her on screen throughout the hearing. She did end up having her own doula sort of help her out at one point with this argument, but she was really trying to make her case by herself in the face of quite a bit of opposition from both the state attorney's office and the hospital.
It seems in this case that the state attorney's office is almost a portal through which the doctors are making their case, that the doctors are sort of bringing this because they're concerned that the life of the child is in danger. In this case, they said that they were worried about the child's survival. And so they're essentially making the case to the judge about, from a medical standpoint, why they believe this is urgent or at least necessary. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I would say absolutely that the hospitals do initiate these procedures, and they're really the experts in this field. And throughout this hearing, the judge and the state attorney's office is very much relying on their judgment in this case. And of course, doctors do have expertise in this field. I'm not discounting that, but this is really very much something that the hospital sort of reaches out and gets this process rolling. There was basically a state of Florida decision several years ago that said, the state attorney has to act in this. They have to be the portal. They have to act in the interest of the fetus in these types of cases. So that's why the hospital can't really directly go to the judge and ask for a hearing. It has to go through the state attorney's office. And that is what you see here, but it is very much sort of a hospital procedure. And, I think also important to note that the judge did not call this hearing. He's also here at the request of the hospital and the state attorney's office. And I think in a fairly difficult position, I would say that these hearings are a difficult position for the judge to be in.
Sure. Difficult.
So, gosh, now here's my thing. As somebody that has a lot of respect for many doctors, one of the reasons why I got a kidney transplant, doctor, there two things are true at the same time. It's true that humans, in large part, are subject to a realm of set standards. Like, for instance, the human body cannot withstand heat more than 120 degrees, right? There is, if your blood pressure goes, 180 above 100, then that there's medical intervention that is necessary. All these different things, right? At the same time, the parameters in which humans are designated as either healthy, kind of in the middle, or in good health, it is more of a spectrum. And sometimes that spectrum is not respected as that's that person's normal. And so sometimes it is treated as one size fits all. It's like, okay, you may be able to take this. Like, for instance, your blood pressure is like this low and you may be fine, but we cannot go by this because we have to go by a set standard, because this is, and a lot of times it'll be because of hospital protocol. And so a lot of times it'll be hospital protocol that says, okay, well, we have to go by this, even though I may disagree and you are okay in this regard. Hospital protocol, by means of the law, because, and also you got to remember, CMS has to get involved, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the Health and Human Services, things like that. So they have to abide by a certain parameter, right? But sometimes these parameters, people kind of venture outside of it a little bit as their normal. And so it may not be so black and white. There are some gray areas, but a lot of these laws, they don't allow for gray areas for the most part, because the need to make sure that the greatest majority of people are specifically cared for is, so for them, it's more paramount. So they can't venture outside that, because what if they're wrong? You know what I mean? And so that's the difficult part. And for them, it's like, okay, well, we have to preserve the life of the fetus. And the crazy part is, why in the world don't you think that the mom is at the hospital? Why do you think she, as a doula, is at the hospital having this baby? Why didn't she have it at home? Would it be because she knows that she is a high risk already, and she's about to have her fourth kid? On top of that, she's already had 3 prior C-sections. Now, here's my thing, and I think this is something that I've observed, especially, and I've read an article about this, is that C-sections became so normalized, especially between the 80s and the 90s, to the point where there was a lot of women having C-sections, and it wasn't actually really deemed necessary. And so because of that, there's also a financial aspect to this a lot of people don't talk about. A cesarean section is a surgery. Regular labor and delivery is not surgical. C-sections are, which means that labor and delivery, hospital may make a little bit of money or they may break even, but that's pretty much it, right? C-sections, which is a surgery, Hospital, they cash it in. They cash in every single C-section. If you have a C-section, they're cashing in, right? Because that is a surgery. It requires a surgeon, right? And so because it requires that, there's also the incentive of making more money. I'm not saying that this is the hospital's incentive was to make more money, but it makes it a little bit easier. It's a little less weighing on the conscience of the administrators of the hospital and say, oh, well, yeah, we should be able to do a surgery because it's going to make them a little bit more money. And this is why I talk about having a healthcare system that is for all, where it is owned by the people, not by private corporations, not even by nonprofits, because nonprofits really are just corporations too. They just run under a certain category. And so this is why I look at situations like this and I'm like, wait a minute. Why in the world are we making choices for people when it should be between a doctor and a hospital? And here's the crazy part about this is that she said that she didn't want one unless it was an absolute emergency. But the thing is, like, if it's not an absolute emergency, then why are they pushing for it? Because Mr. Reese Doyley, she said, I'm fine with a C-section if it's an absolute emergency. But if it's not, we're going to have a regular birth. And I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Anybody who's in a chat who is a nurse, especially who is in labor and delivery, or anybody that's a doctor, especially if you're an OBGYN, like, to me, I'm like, that should be the standard. Like, C-section should be the last resort, right? Now, I have no medical degree. Do not take medical advice from me because I do not have medical background, right? However, I have been a patient in the medical system quite frequently for almost 20 years. So I know a little bit. But here's my thing. Shouldn't that be, number one, at discretion of the doctors and the patients? Number one. And number two, why in the world are we getting the state involved? Because far be it from me to reject the jab, especially during a pandemic, and then they can't do anything with me because bodily autonomy. But then if I have a uterus, well, that kind of goes out the window. And this kind of goes into my whole gripe with, even with women who are, let's say, between the 20s and 30s, and they're like, oh, I want to get my tubes tied. And doctors will stop them and go, wait, you might regret this. Or we need to get your husband's permission first. Or something other than, we don't want to do that right now. Even though you may really want to, and you may even have a medical reason for it, because there are some women who are like, look, I can't get pregnant because if I get pregnant, I will die. So tie my tubes. And they're like, you might regret it. I won't be able to regret it if I'm dead. Right? It reminds me of I think it was a Reddit post, how there was a woman, she went to dentist. Was she a dentist? Or was she, I think she was a teenager. Was she a teenager or an adult? I can't remember. But she went to the dentist and she had significantly longer canines, teeth, than typical, right? But she said she loved that fact about, her teeth, right? That she had more pronounced canines than a lot of other people. And so while she was getting dental work done, while she was under The dentist took it upon himself to shave down her canines to make her look more feminine according to his liking. So when she woke up, her teeth, her canines were shaved down. He took liberty to shave them down for her without her consent because she was a woman. And so this is the type of stuff that a lot of people don't talk about, like the medical misogyny. It happens all the time. And this is a whole another thing, right? Like, that's not right. And a lot of us dudes, like, I wish you would tell me what to do with my own body. I dare you. We don't have that same thing for women. It's kind of weird. Anyway, let's continue on.
Decisions all around. You, of course, reached out to our local state attorney's office in your reporting. You also reached out to UF Health Jacksonville, which was the hospital involved. We also reached out. The state attorney sent us essentially the same answers to the questions that you asked. One of their statements being, the courts have held that the state has a compelling interest in the preservation of the life of an unborn child and the protection of innocent third parties who may be harmed by the parental refusal to allow or consent to life-saving medical treatment. And the hospital didn't answer your questions, Amy, any of your questions, but in the hearing, the chair of that obstetrics and gynecology department said that the hospital has been recognized for its low C-section rates, that they're not likely or inclined to perform unnecessary C-sections, essentially making the case that this was necessary. Do we know more about what the risk was to this child, how the determination was made that this C-section ultimately was necessary in an emergency situation?
Yeah, so I mean, it's difficult to obviously predict what will happen in any given birth situation. I will say that both women, Charisse and Brianna, had had 3 prior C-sections, which put them in a higher risk category than, a typical VBAC. The ACOG guidelines say that you shouldn't try for labor, do a trial of labor really after more than 2 C-sections, although I will say that the evidence that I've seen on that procedure for a third VBAC are pretty inconclusive. There's just not a lot of data there to say how risky it is. I will say that really what this came down to was the doctors very much thought this was too risky to attempt. And Ms. Doyley, who's also very knowledgeable about childbirth, believed that the risks were more manageable. And I think that it's less about the actual risk and more about a difference of opinion.
I mean, she's a doula, right?
Right. And she's actually was training to be a midwife as well. So she had been in midwifery school. She had attended a lot of births. She's not naive to the risks. And that's the reason she was at the hospital, frankly, is that she knew she was higher risk, and she believed that if something happened during her pregnancy, this was the right place to be to ensure sort of the best treatment. But she also had very good reasons to want to avoid a repeat C-section. She'd had very bad experiences in the past and had had hemorrhages. And this, this story is really kind of more about, the legal aspect of who gets to make these choices. I think the risk element, I've certainly heard from a lot of OBs that this is very much more risky than a decision that they would support. But ultimately, the issue here is that other types of patients are allowed to make their own medical decisions, even when those are dangerous decisions. The only group of patients that aren't allowed to do that, who are mentally competent, are pregnant women. And I think that is the main issue that we are looking at.
You point out in your piece that, an adult that's of competent mental state has a right to choose or refuse medical care. And that even a prisoner on a hunger strike in the state of Florida has more rights when it comes to receiving medical treatment than in a case of a woman who is being court ordered to have a surgical birth in this case. When we talked about her request for an attorney, she also is making observations about just a racial dynamic that was happening in her view in this hearing, where she was the only person of color on a screen with multiple Zoom windows, all white faces, and she asked for someone, a Black doctor, a Black nurse, someone that she felt perhaps could better represent from her perspective, and she was worried about having decisions made without that perhaps she felt were not informed about the best needs of her and her child.
Yeah. It's just like it reminds me of the issues surrounding things like endometriosis, right? About how especially a lot of Black women will complain about pain and excess bleeding, things like that. And then a lot of times, especially if they're a white OB or non-Black, will kind of be flippant about it and just wave it away. And part of this is due to racism within the medical profession. I'm not talking about individual, like personal, interpersonal racism. I'm talking about institutionalized racism that is taught within the medical field, basically saying things like, Black people feel pain less. We have a higher pain tolerance, things like that. And so, you can talk to me as a former kidney dialysis patient, as a kidney transplant patient, how medical racism actually contributes to more Black people being on dialysis than any other group. And so, unfortunately, Black women in particular are not paid attention to as often as they should be in regards to any concerns that they have. And this is why the mortality rate among Black women, especially during childbirth, is higher. And so that's another thing that I really would like to point out, right? And so, of course, I think it's quite obvious the fact that number one, she showed up to the hospital, that she's concerned about her baby being born healthy. And as far as the medical decisions go, she said that she wanted to do if it required an emergency C-section, she would do it. But she wanted to try for a regular average birth instead. Because, that's what she wanted. Now, it's kind of interesting because it makes it seem like she was trying to be flippant about her health and the health of her baby, when in reality, that wasn't the case at all. In fact, she was so focused on the health of her baby and herself that she was trying to avoid getting a C-section, because C-sections can also contribute to some medical issues down the road. Well, and so let me share this with you guys as well. Now, this is out of the Lancet. I'm just going to read the summary. Actually, let me read the title first. It says, interventions to reduce unnecessary C-sections in healthy women and babies, right? So it says, optimizing the use of cesarean sections is of global concern. Underuse leads to maternal and prenatal mortality and morbidity. Conversely, overuse of C-sections has not shown benefits and can create harm. Worldwide, the frequency of C-sections continues to increase, and interventions to reduce unnecessary C-sections has shown little progress. Identifying the underlying factors for the continuing increase in C-section use should improve the efficacy of interventions. In this series paper, we describe the factors for C-section use that are associated with women, families, health professionals, and healthcare organizations and systems. And we examine behavioral, psychological, health system, financial factors. We also outline the type and effects of interventions to reduce C-sections use that have been investigated. Clinical interventions such as external cephalic version of breech delivery at term, vaginal breech delivery in appropriately selected women, and a vaginal birth after C-section could reduce the frequency of C-section use. Approaches such as labor companionship and midwife-led care have been associated with higher proportions of physiological births, safer outcomes, and lower healthcare costs relative to control groups without these interventions, and with positive maternal experiences in high-income countries. Such approaches need to be assessed in middle-income and low-income countries. Educational interventions for women should be complemented with meaningful dialogue with health professionals and effective emotional support for women and families. Investing in the training of health professionals, eliminating financial incentives for C-section use. Let me repeat that part. Eliminating financial incentives for C-section use and reducing fear of litigation is fundamental. Safe, private, welcoming, and adequately resourced facilities are needed at the country level. Effective medical leadership is essential to ensure C-section is used only when indicated. We conclude that interventions to reduce overuse must be multi-component and locally tailored, addressing women's health professionals' concerns, as well as healthcare systems and financial factors. So that's the whole thing, right? And this is why I'm kind of looking on with a little bit of a side eye. I'm like, y'all are, people would be pressing, for something that may not be completely necessary. So that's something that I'm kind of wondering about. And don't get me wrong, I do want to see as many people who are giving birth to have the baby as healthy as possible. But at the same time, we shouldn't be so quick to push for something outside of the guise of the medical professional and the patient. Let me take a look here. This is out of the Mayo Clinic. So these are the reasons for a C-section. Labor slows or stops. The baby's heart is not tolerating labor. The baby is in an unusual position, which be breech, which means they're trying to come out feet first, when in reality, it should be coming out head first. If you're carrying more than one baby, so if you are having twins or triplets or more, there's a problem with the placenta. It says there's a prolapsed umbilical cord. You have health concern, there's a blockage, or you have a C-section before or other surgery on the uterus. So let me go into risks, right? Risks to babies include breathing problems. Baby born by C-section are more likely to develop a breathing issue that causes them to breathe too fast for a few days after birth. This condition is called transient tachypnea. Sorry, I'm not very adept at medical terms and words. It says surgical injury, although rare, accident nicks to the baby's skin can occur during surgery. Risks to mothers include infection. After a C-section, there's a risk of developing an infection of the lining of the uterus called endometriosis in the urinary tract or at the site of incision. Blood loss. A C-section has more bleeding during and after delivery. Reactions to anesthesia. Reactions to any type of anesthesia are possible. Blood clots. A C-section may increase the risk of developing a blood clot inside a deep vein, especially in the legs or pelvis. This is called deep vein thrombosis. If a blood clot travels to the lungs and blocks blood flow, it's called a pulmonary embolism. This can be a life-threatening condition. Surgical injury. Although rare, surgical injuries to the bladder or bowel can occur during C-section. Increased risks during future pregnancies. Having a C-section increases risks of complications and later pregnancy. The more C-sections, the higher the risks of scar tissue issues with the placenta, such as placenta previa and placenta accreta, also may happen. Placenta accreta happens when the placenta becomes attached to the wall of the uterus. A C-section also increases the risks of the uterus tearing along the scar line. If you decide to have any vaginal delivery in a later pregnancy, this tearing is called uterine rupture. Uterine rupture can be life-threatening for a baby. So I think this is probably what they were venturing towards. They were probably concerned the most about uterine rupture. Okay. So this is actually out of the Mayo Clinic, right? These are facts from the Mayo Clinic. And this is why, I wanted to cover this as well, because there are people who have C-sections all the time, right? At the same time, are they being used just as a routine, or are they being used in case of emergency? Is it absolutely necessary, right? Especially after you have your first kid. And here's the crazy part. There's a lot of people who they had their first kid as a C-section and there was no complications. It was decided, oh, you're going to have a C-section. Or if the complications were very mild, oh, well, we'll just do a C-section. It's easier. Easier for whom? That's another question, right? Because pregnancy recovery is 1 to 2 days, right? C-sections is 2 weeks minimum, right? Because you just had surgery. So that's the difference, right? There's also risk for infections and things like that also happen too. So let me share this out of the article that she wrote. And it says both doctors and Doily mentioned recommendations from the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. However, neither one cited organization stance on court-ordered C-sections, which the group had deemed to be ethically impermissible. After 3 hours of testimony, all while Doily lay in her hospital bed, the judge ruled that she could keep laboring unless there was an emergency. If that had happened, the hospital could operate whether she wanted it or not. The judge would reconvene the hearing in the morning. In response to the questions from ProPublica, Khalil wrote in an email that the Judicial Code of Conduct prohibits judges from commenting on cases, so he couldn't talk about it. Overnight, doctors said the baby's heart rate dropped for 7 minutes. Doily woke to her hospital bed being wheeled to surgery. She called out to her sister who was asleep in the hospital room. I had to tell her, hey, wake up. Something is going on. She's trying to put on her shoes. I'm like, girl, leave the shoes. Let's go. Doily recalled reciting her short prayer as her sister scrambled into the operating room. The baby was delivered by C-section. Although Doily's daughter was initially limp, she perked up and became responsive within a few minutes. Doctors took her to the NICU while Doily went to recover and to get ready to face the judge again. At the 8 a.m. hearing, Doily looked pained and groggy. This is a whole nother thing, right? Why are you in a court hearing while you're groggy and also, after having anesthesia, right? She told the judge that she still hasn't been allowed to see her daughter and asked if he could help. A doctor testified that the baby had been brought to the NICU in respiratory distress and placed on a continuous positive airway pressure machine to help her with her breathing. Khalil said that he couldn't order the hospital to do anything. The matter had been appointed to hear involved only to her unborn baby. He had no authority over the child in the nursery. So he has authority over the child before it's born, but after it's born, he has no authority to let the mom see her baby, even though it was taken out of her. This is it's so frustrating. This is the frustrating part, man. Oh my gosh. Says Khalil wished her well and quickly closed the case. So that's her, right? So I'm thankful that she had the baby successfully and the baby is okay. At the same time, when it comes to autonomy of people, especially when they're trying to make sure not just they are okay, but the baby is okay. And yet it's still like, well, you better have it this way. And it's like, It's like, yeah, duh. I'm going to have it as healthy as I possibly can. I want to be able to have at least some say over my health, including when I'm delivering, because it's still her body. But there's going to be big debates over stuff like this. This is major debates. And so I want to know what you guys think, right? Was the state in the right to intervene? Or do you think that that her body autonomy should have been respected more? Because I think that, she was fine with having an emergency C-section, but it had to be an emergency, which technically I think it got to that point. But if it wasn't, then you shouldn't be forcing a C-section on somebody that doesn't need an emergency C-section. And so, and I'm saying all this because there's a family member of mine that's about to have a baby. And I don't want to see them subject to the same thing here in the state of Florida. Also, by the way, while we're on it, and people can say to me, James, you're a dude, you're a cisgendered man, you have no business talking about this. And you're right. I really, like, my opinion really does not matter in this. That's precisely why in my solidarity with women, females, is that if you are, I'll put it this way. How do you know you're pregnant? When you miss your period, right? Periods every 28 days or so. So once a month. You don't know you missed your period until your period is what? Late. So you may wait a week, then 2 weeks. And that 2 weeks, guess what? From your last period, that's what? 6 weeks. And then once you find out you're pregnant, let's say you don't want to have a pregnancy, and let's say you want to terminate that pregnancy, you no longer can, even though you just found out. And so then now you're forced to have to give birth to that child. And now if you are being forced to give birth to that child, and then on top of that, you may have to do a C-section, or you may have, you're being forced to do that. It's like, well, I didn't want to be pregnant in the first place. I didn't want to, I'm just thinking about the variables here. And so when the procedure could have been done ages ago, which would have been no harm at all to I'm trying to be respectful, to a body of cells that has no personhood, you could have terminated that pregnancy and then it would have been over. But now you have to divert all these resources to have this. And now, even when you want to make decisions about your own body as far as having it, a judge has to intervene. It's just, and if she or the baby dies in childbirth or both, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. It's just, as somebody that has had to undergo many surgeries and has been on dialysis for almost 18 years, patient advocacy for myself and my body autonomy is paramount. But I can't, like, if I were born female, it's almost like a chain tied around your ankle, and you can only move so far. Whereas those of us who are anatomically male, we can roam about freely. I don't know, man. Just it doesn't feel fair to me. It doesn't feel fair to me. I don't know. But let me know what you guys think. This is really up to women to decide. But nevertheless, I'm with you. Go ahead and give a like to the stream. I know it was a bit of a long one, but man, this one, it's like I'm kind of stuck because it's like I'm a guy. So I really I have my opinion, but my opinion is first and foremost is like, okay, women, what do you want? And then I hear a lot of women go, well, we want this. And then I hear some women go, well, we want the other thing. But then I also hear a lot of men side with the women who say that we want the other thing. But then I see a huge chunk of women say, nah, we don't want. And then even some women who are consider themselves to be conservative, they're like 6 weeks is way too early. That's way too early. 6 weeks, you're just finding out your period's late. It's wild. You know what I mean? And what if you can't have kids because it's a risk to your health? And now you absolutely have to go through with the pregnancy. And what if it's an ectopic pregnancy? That literally is a death sentence for both people. Man, I don't know, man. I don't like it, man. I just don't like it. You know, maybe I'm wrong in some ways, but I'm checking the Rumble chat really quick. Let me check the Kick chat to see if we have any gifted subs. Do I sound ignorant, especially women in the chat? Do I sound ignorant to you guys? If so, just correct me. I will kindly take the correction, you know, if I am. But I don't know. My brain's just, you know, the hamster's running on the wheel, man. Okay, Trav says, Care Bear, good to see you. Trav says, Florida is a state of mind. Oh, Lord, is it? Oh my God. Dr. Quinn, medicine woman. Oh my gosh. Man, you taking me back. I think my sister-in-law still has the DVD box set. Oh my gosh. Anyway, Jacqueline says the only time people should have a C-section is if there's a medical need for one. Oh, and question, how much are women giving birth charged for these C-sections? So, as far as being charged for C-sections, I saw, yeah. Let me share with you. And this is part of the class aspect that I left out. I should include this. Wait, what in the world? I should have included this when I was still going through all the facts. But you are not for. Oh, wait, I can continue without disabling. Okay, cool. All right. So let me share this with you, so you guys can see as well how much it actually costs for a C-section. So here's how much it costs to give birth in Florida. It says Florida is among the costliest states to deliver a baby for those without insurance, along New Jersey and Alaska. So I'm going to hide this really quick for a second so we can see the whole thing. Okay. So the median cost for a vaginal birth in Florida is $31,983.52, or $12,603.64 for those with insurance. For a C-section, that number jumps to $41,299.31, or $15,445.17 for insured patients. Now, the least expensive state to give birth is Alabama, for vaginal and C-sections. And then, so yeah, but it's really like the most expensive state to have vaginal birth is in New York, New Jersey, Alaska, California, and Florida. So Florida's in the top 5. Yeah. Florida's in the top 5 states to have kids. So on top of that, they made bank on the C-section. Trav says, no, JB, C-section should be the last resort. Let me... Good to see you, John Kemper. Says, peace, love, and solidarity. Good to see you, John. Roger says, establish relations with Cuba. Send freedmen to Cuba to become nurses and doctors. When they come back, have them form a co-op medical institutions for research and development, hospitals, medical, dental facilities to serve our community. Thank you very much for that. John says, this system is so sick. Why these fools want to be involved in births? No discussion required. Women can manage their own bodies. Here's the thing, and this is coming from me and my brain. They need as much workers to be born as possible. This is another reason why you have a lot of these laws that are anti-LGBTQ, because anybody that's LGBTQ, if we're doing things with each other, that means somebody ain't getting pregnant unless they're bisexual and they're in a relationship with the opposite sex. Outside of that, yeah, no, there ain't no babies being brought about. And so for them, that means there's less workers for them to exploit. That's ultimately what it's about. And so they go, well, no, you guys need to have as much as possible. And they want you to cause the population to explode, because then that's more workers. But if more workers, this also means more people unemployed, because they're not going to need all those workers. And so are we on a population decline? Yeah. Yep. Because a lot of Gen Z ain't having kids. They wrapping it up. They're wrapping it up. They're like, nope, because it's too expensive. And we're going to get into that also with the story regarding Iran, because it's too expensive to live. Robert says, reminds me of the Adrena Smith case from last year. A lot of things reminding me of that case lately. Yeah. Sean says, this is absolutely sad and disgusting. Her right should bodily autonomy was definitely violated. I agree. Good to see Akime, says JB in the place to be, and he's got what it takes to rock the mic. Thank you so very much for this. Roger says, time we investigate the judge. Also, NAACP in 2023 put an advisory warning to all freedmen of ever moving, but to not even visiting Florida. Sucks to be me. One thing I am grateful for, Tampa General Hospital, they did right by me. That's one thing I can definitely say. That was a bright spot. I'm grateful to them because, and my dialysis center that I was at, which is a nonprofit, Central Florida Kidney Center, they did right by me, man. They definitely did. So I won the lottery with them. To all them doctors and nurses and techs, because we always talk about doctors and nurses, but we never talk about the techs and the CNAs. Them too, man. They did great. They did great with me. Yeah. But yeah, man, I'm just, sometimes I wonder if I'm out of my league talking about this, but at the same time, I really just want people to have as much freedom as possible, as long as that freedom doesn't encroach upon the rights of others. That's what I would like to see. All right, so I am going way over time, but let's get into the next subject. But first, why didn't I do this? Well, we can always recover. All right, everybody. Yes, I still got some tea left. I didn't drink all my tea. I'm happy about that. All right, everybody, let's give a shout out to the patrons on Patreon, and let's continue on with the show. All right, so here's all the tiers. Thank you so very much to all the patrons on Patreon. Without you guys, this show is not possible. And so we have the tiers here. We have Mega Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, and Jaybefaunters. Then we have Comrades and Solidarity, and we also got the JB members. And thank you to all new future members for becoming patrons on Patreon. For without you guys, this channel does not exist, and you guys absolutely make it possible for me to exist on this platform. So thank you so very much to all of you. All right. Let's get into the next one. So, of course, we talked about, is it overreach or is it justified when it comes to having a baby in the state of Florida? But now we're going to be talking about Orlando housing falls. So this is a story that recently came out that I wanted to discuss because ultimately we're going to be feeling the big pinch very, very soon. So let's get into it. Major shortage. Do you have a place to live that you can afford in 2026? Well, good for you, because many people are now going to be basically out on the lurch. They're going to be hosed because there's not enough affordable housing for everybody, especially in the city of Orlando. Right now, as we are experiencing an influx of a lot of affordable housing that is now occupied or out of reach, as it were, for many of us who are just trying to keep our head above water. And so now, as we see, as things become to get more expensive, especially in regards to the tariffs that the Trump regime has put in place, or in addition to that, we also have this war of attrition with Iran that is causing our prices to skyrocket. It's making affordable housing even worse. So let's talk about this. Let me share this with you guys, and we shall get into this story here around housing shortage. So let's get into it. All right, everybody.
Florida is now being ranked the worst rental market in the nation for low-income families. A new report shows there are only 82 affordable homes and apartments for every 100 families from Kissimmee to Sanford. Channel 9's Nick Pampantona is breaking down the new data tonight to show why the middle class is being priced out of the region.
It's crazy, like especially in downtown Orlando.
Adam Mastrobono says high house.
I'm sorry, but does this guy look like Jordan Sheridan? I mean, not every white guy with glasses looks like Jordan Sheridan, but he kind of looks like Jordan a little bit in the face. I'm just being real. Though he does not have, the cool 5 o'clock shadow. That's the only thing he doesn't have. But shout out to you, Jordan. I haven't had you on in a while. Got to have you back on. But he kind of looks like Jordan Sheridan a little bit in the face. That's just an observation. I'm sorry. When I first saw that, I was like, wait, he looks like somebody I know. Anyway. Sorry, guys. Let's continue.
Priced out of the region.
It's crazy, like especially in downtown Orlando.
Adam Mastrobono says high housing costs eat up too much of his teacher's salary to allow him to move out on his own. His ideal price, a number downtown Orlando hasn't seen in years.
How much is an apartment worth to you? I think here in Central Florida, I'd say $1,250, $1,300.
6-7 years ago, we couldn't say what we're saying right now. For $1,200-$1,500, you could actually get yourself a 3-bedroom house.
The National Low Income Housing Coalition's annual report was almost all bad news for Central Floridians. There are now just 13 affordable housing units for every 100 low-income families, tied with Las Vegas for worst in the nation. There are 82 units for every 100 families making up to an average income. The 4th year in a row, that number has fallen.
So let's stop here at the graph. All right, I'm gonna talk about the graph. I want to talk about the chart. I'm gonna get my savvy sabs on because she likes data, so I'm gonna imitate my sister. But here's the thing, right? 82 affordable housing units out of every 100. That means that 18 families, not people, families, are not going to be able to have affordable housing. So there's only 2 options for them outside of that. Either one, go into housing that they cannot afford, which is impossible because now the set standard is you have to make 3 times the rent in order to be able to afford an apartment. That's the set standard here in Florida now. You have to make at least 3 times the rent. So if your rent is $3,000 a month, then you better be making $9,000. Now I'm going a little high. So if your rent is $2,000 a month, you better be pulling in $6,000 a month. You better be pulling $6,000 a month, either between you and another person in the household, or you by yourself. One or two, but you got to be making at least 3 times the income. And do not fail the credit check. Don't fail the credit check. And you better not fail the credit check. And if you have somebody living with you, they better not fail the credit check as well. Because if they don't pass the credit check, that means that you both don't qualify because both people have to qualify in the credit check in order to be able to get the apartment. And that's after you guys pay for the $50, $60, maybe $75 application fee that they also have to do on top of all that. And then after you do all that, then you got to put in the deposit. And then you got to give first month's rent. Thank God we're not in New York because you have to do last month's and first month's and security deposit. And you also have to do a brokerage fee. I can't talk today, but it is what it is. But the thing is like, that's how bad it is. And so 18 families that do not have affordable place to live. The other thing is if they can't afford this place that is outside of their league affordability wise, well, guess what? They're going to have to either do one or two things, shack up with another family or be out on the street. It's one of the two. And people are wondering, oh my God, why is Gen Z still living at home? You wonder why? Here's why. It's crazy to me how so many people will dog the younger generation for still living at home when home is unaffordable. The rent is too damn high. Look, rent is so high that Cheech and Chong are like, damn, that's high. Rent is so high that it surprised Keith Richards. It's that high. So damn high, I think Rick James will come back from the dead and be like, damn, that's high. So the thing is like, this is why it is such a huge story to me, because not only is the rent too damn high, but our population is going up. My sister Savvy Sab, she did a show a few days, was it last week? About how the populations here in Florida and in Texas is booming. Why? Don't take any offense to this, but all y'all are moving here. That's why. All y'all from Massachusetts, you guys from New Jersey. I'm actually originally from New Jersey, but shh, don't tell nobody. But from New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Delaware, we got people coming from Michigan, Illinois, all y'all moving here. And then in Texas, y'all got a whole bunch of people from Colorado, Nevada, California, Washington, and they're bringing their high wages, but at the same time, we're being priced out. And this is what I call intrastate gentrification. Because you guys are trying to find something cheaper because it's way too expensive where you're at, but then you guys come here and then you guys end up causing the prices to go up here, and now we can't afford to live where we're living. And where's the only place that we can go, right? The only place that we possibly can go is we have to either go back to the old place that we were used to be, or we have to go to a different state, something like that. We have to, either have a different state. We have to go to something even cheaper. But this also continues the same cycle, right? The same cycle that happens in regards to another place, right? Because I can move out of Florida, I can move to Alabama, I can move to Mississippi, but this is the same thing, right? So yeah, let's continue on.
The developer told us Central Floridians will start feeling the effects of that and another round of rising prices because it will take years for projects stuck behind high interest rates to get greenlit and built.
We're in this gulf that nobody sees yet of lack of housing supply that is still okay for now because you're sort of living off that really big amount of supply that came on a few years ago. But that's largely been absorbed.
Sure. Do you feel confident in your own game plan and your own chances of finding that place where you feel good about it?
I'm going to have to be honest and say no.
In Orlando, Nick Papantonis, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
And as families look for places to live, some say a huge financial lifeline is being pulled out from under them. We spoke to a woman today who was getting assistance for her family to live at an extended stay while waiting for a new apartment to accept them. It's known as bridge housing, but nonprofit groups told us the state's bridge housing funds ended last month. The woman who works full-time said she was given a week's notice that the help she was promised would not be available. She spoke to us just 1 hour before her rent was due.
I don't know how one person is supposed to make it without going out doing something wrong. The stories I've been hearing these women say and I've been watching these women do, I don't want to be pushed to that. I don't want to be pushed to that life.
A few minutes after we spoke with her, a housing group told her they would pay her rent for the week and help her family get a ride to the apartment they're trying to move into, which is on the other side of town.
And so this is another aspect, right? It's kind of funny. We have all this money for subsidies for big corporations. We have all this money for alligator Alcatraz, and yet, we have people like this woman that are suffering because, because there's no money. There's no money for people like her because the social welfare that is supposed to exist within the state, that money is gone. They're pulling the rug from under people. And they'll say, well, she needs to pick up herself by her bootstraps. She ain't got no boots, man. She ain't got no boots and she ain't even got no socks. And how are you going to ask her to pick herself up by the bootstraps? But y'all won't dare say a damn thing to Elon Musk, who owns the entire space coast in this state. Pick up yourself by your bootstraps. We're here subsidizing people like Elon Musk, and you got this lady right here who got kids living in an extended stay hotel in a one-room apartment. It's not an apartment, I'm sorry. In one hotel room, motel room, where they're all sleeping in the same room, maybe have a kitchenette, and that's it. There's no space, there's no privacy. And this is another one of these stories that riles me up. Because we got a system like this that puts people in this position. I'm going to get back to a point that she said here. Hang on, let me see if I can find it. Hang on. Let me make sure I get, let's see. Okay.
She spoke to us just 1 hour before her rent was due.
I don't know how one person is supposed to make it without going out doing something wrong. The stories I've been hearing these women say and I've been watching these women do, I don't want to be pushed to that.
This is part of the plan. It's part of the plan to get people to do things that are not legal, according to our law, out of desperation. Remember what I said? Right? What drives crime? It is out of desperation and lack of opportunity. I told you, this is one of the main drivers of crime. And people are being driven to do things that they don't want to do in order to survive. And people will say, oh, well, she should get a job. A lot of people have jobs. They have full-time jobs. Most people who are unhoused have full-time jobs. Over 40%. A lot of them have full-time jobs and they can't even afford to live where they're at. In the state of Florida, I think it was 2018, we voted to increase our wages to $15 an hour by 2026. And so here in Florida, in September, right, our wages, our minimum wage will be $15 an hour. But here's the problem. It takes more than double that to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in this state. Now, they quoted the National Low Income Housing Out of Reach report, which is done every single year. And so Florida, which is the 9th most expensive state in this country, you need to make $37.27 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom rental. 2 bedrooms. So for the average person, let's say you have a single parent and 1 or 2 kids, because that's what you would need, a 2-bedroom. Guess what? You got to make $37.27. And what if she's making 17? What if she's making $18 an hour? It's above minimum wage, but it's still wholly inadequate. Now, I'm also one of those people that does have sympathy for people who own homes. And people like Ron DeSantis saying that we need to end property taxes for homeowners. But the devil's also in the details. And when it comes to ending property taxes, while that's great, right? Who is that tax burden going to fall on? It's going to fall on people like that lady. It's going to fall on people like me, renters. Because guess what's going to happen? Our taxes in other ways are going to go up, and it's going to be on us. So we're going to be the ones who are tax burdened. The people who don't own property. See what I mean? Who don't own any type of means of production. We're going to be the ones who are taxed even heavier. We're going to be taxed for not owning property. We're going to be taxed for not having home ownership or land ownership. It's punishment on us. I know a lot of people who are going, wait, I never thought about it that way. Yeah, you're shirking that on us. How much equity do we own without owning property, without owning a home? How much equity do we have? See what I mean? And so when it comes to the state of Florida, I think it's imperative that we pay attention, because this is a trend that will continue to rise. And how many people are going to be out on the streets even more? And then that's going to drive up the crime rates. We already have a whole bunch of cop cities that are being built within the state. And on top of that, and I know some people who would think, oh, well, ICE is only going after the illegals. I'm like, all right, well, they're going to expand their purview on who they can get and who they can't. Watch. And now, if you're put in a position where you may end up having to do something that's not so legal in order to be able to survive, and if they catch you, I'm not saying you'll be deported, but I'm saying that the likelihood of you going to jail or them being more harsher on you and putting your ass in prison, and then you having to work for these corporations for free or damn nearly free, is going to be even higher. And so, yeah, you'll finally have a job, but you'll be working on behalf of these big corporations as a slave, because they're going to have even less tolerance, because they got to keep the law and order in place. And so Orlando is really going down the tubes. It was been going down the tubes for quite a while. And both Democrats and Republicans have contributed to this. Make no mistake about it. But you're going to look down and you're going to look back up and you're going to go, wait, which one is more expensive? New York City or Orlando? Stay tuned, y'all. Go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you very much to everybody. Let's check on the Rumble side to see if we have any Rumble rants. All right, so we are good on the Rumble side. Let's get into, let's check the Kick chat. Oh, and let me put the links to the articles for you guys as well. My apologies, I forgot to put the links to those two articles for y'all. Here's the ProPublica article for Florida court ordering C-sections. I'm gonna put that in the article first so you guys can have that. So you guys can share that with family and friends. And then also, this is also a great resource to have. Bookmark this one and keep it on you whenever you guys are having conversations with people, for the National Low Income Housing Out of Reach Report. And the new one comes out in July. So stay tuned. but you have a couple more months left on this one. So I put that in the chat for you guys as well. So you guys have that there. Okay. All right. Now, I love that out of reach report. It just speaks volumes into the state of this nation. And then also I'll do the housing shortage as well. Because my thing is, like, even though it may not be happening in your particular city, it might be coming to a city near you. And that's the scary part. Okay. All right. So we're going to get into our final story, because this is going to be one that's going to be for the books. Oh, let me play this Mayo Clinic article too about the oh, okay. Roger said, he said in all caps, make sure to tell them to download the PDF, JB. It gets granular on cities. Yeah, granular like sugar. And yes, Roger, I just said you have some sugar in your tank. What you going to do about it? Put it in your grits. Put it in your grits. Sugar in your grits. Some sugar in your grits. Sugar in your grits. Kiss my grits. Sugar in your grits. I'm sorry, let me stop. I'm too damn stupid for this show. Why the hell y'all watch me? Anyway. All right, so let's get into the final segment. All right. So, of course, we talked about overreach or justified when it comes to C-section births in Florida. And then we talked about a housing fall, especially for affordable housing in Florida. We're now going to be talking about strong talks. Strong talks. Trump said strong talks? The lies, Donald, the lies. Let's get into this. Liar, liar, pants on fire. That is Donald Trump. And let me tell you what I need to tell you. Somebody needs to kick him in the... Anyway, look, Donald Trump has been lying to the public in order to shore up the markets so that people who are rich will continue to keep making money. And this is kind of funny. So I want to share with you guys what Donald Trump said first, because Donald Trump decided to make threats. Look, I'm going to put it this way. There's a phrase that was pretty prevalent in the Black community. Don't let your mouth write a check that your ass can't cash. Donald Trump wrote a check and it bounced. I'm just saying that check bounced, baby. Let me share the check that he tried to write, and I'm going to share the bouncing of the check. All right, so this is from Donald Trump on his website, True Social, and it was shared by the White House. So if anybody goes, oh, well, I don't know if that's true. No, baby. It was shared by the White House. You know, they like the glaze over this orange donut. All right, so it says, Donald Trump said, if Iran doesn't fully open without threats the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, I should do that in a mafia boss's voice. If Iran doesn't fully open without threat, Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours From this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest first. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Yep. He had threatened to bomb electric power plants in Iran if they don't open up the Strait of Hormuz. He said, y'all gonna catch this fade if y'all don't open up the Strait of Hormuz. And you know what Iran did? Iran said, all right, go ahead. Go ahead. Give me a free hit. You get a free one. Go ahead. All right, go ahead. Right here. Right here. All right, go ahead. I dare you. Guess what Donald Trump did? Donald Trump is a... I want to play that song by Afro Man so bad. Y'all know what song, but I don't know if I should. But let me let me share this. Oh my goodness, Donald Trump is a son of a. All right, so let me share this with y'all because this is hilarious. Iran said, "What?" All right, let me share. All righty. This is President Trump.
We have had very, very strong talks. We'll see where they lead. We have major points of agreement. I would say almost all points of agreement. Perhaps that hasn't been conveyed. The communication, as you know, has been blown to pieces. They're unable to talk to each other. But we've had very strong talks. Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner had them. They went, I would say, perfectly. I would say that if they carry through with that, it'll end that problem, that conflict. And I think it'll end it very, very substantially. We have very much in mind our partners in the Middle East. We've had great relationships with a lot of them, as you know. A lot of them were surprisingly hit. And I was surprised to see it, and so was everyone else. But we have, they're very much in mind in the discussions. So the discussions took place yesterday. They went into yesterday evening. They want very much to make a deal. We'd like to make a deal too. We're going to get together today by probably phone because it's very hard to find a country. It's very hard for them to get out, I guess. But we'll at some point very, very soon meet. We're doing a 5-day period. We'll see how that goes. And if it goes well, we're going to end up with settling this. Otherwise, we'll just keep bombing our little hearts out.
You know, there's one big issue regarding what Donald Trump just said. Let me share this with you guys because this actually came out. This is out of BNO News. Update. Iranian media says there was no direct or indirect talks with Trump. And Donald Trump had said this also on Truth Social just a couple of days later. He says this. I am pleased to report that the United States of America and the country of Iran have had, over the last 2 days, very good and productive conversations regarding the complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East. By the way, which was started by the United States and Israel. He's leaving that part out. Let's continue on. It says, based on the tenor and tone of these in-depth, detailed, and constructive conversations, which W-I-C-H, Donald, It's spelled which. I'm sorry, I can't even spell. But anyways, which will continue throughout the week. I have instructed the Department of War to postpone any and all military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for a 5-day period, subject to the success of ongoing meetings and discussions. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So let me tell you something. By the way, the president can't spell. Neither can I, but I'm not the president. But here's the point. He blinked. He blinked. Guess what? He was all up in Iran's face, and Iran went, and he blinked. That's what it was. He folded. He folded like a lawn chair at a cookout when all the food is gone. He folded. Because there were no talks. Iran's done talking to them. Because here's the issue with Donald Trump. I don't know why this song came in my head, but Barry White, oh, you just keep telling me this and telling me that. He says, practice what you preach. Look, here's the thing. They kept saying and trying to say, hey, Iran, come to the table. We want to make a deal. Then Iran comes to the table. And then, boom, they bomb Iran. Or, boom, they kill one of their leaders. And then Iran's like, hey, I thought you wanted to talk. Ha ha, sucks to be you, sucker. And then they run the other direction. And they do that over, and they do that over, and they do it over, and over, and over, and over again. Just ask the Native Americans, because they know. And so because of that, now that they're saying, hey, come on, Iran, let's come back to the table. Donald Trump's coming in like Don, Don, almost said Don Corneo because it's from Final Fantasy VII. But he's coming in like Don Corleone. And it's like, wait a minute. We've heard this before. Like Iran, their antenna's going. Yep, we've heard this poem before, so we're going to disregard. We know. And so Iran goes, nice try. And they're going to keep bombing the military sites of the United States, whether they're in the Gulf states or whether they're in Israel. They have been hitting American military sites, even in Tel Aviv. And Tel Aviv is getting rocked right now. They're getting rocked because of what the United States has brought upon them, having a military base there. So much so that even one of the places where it is alleged they actually have a nuclear site, that got rocked. And so because of that, Donald Trump looks like a fool. Donald Trump looks like an idiot. He lied. And he lied. It was kind of funny. He lied. He made this lie right before the markets opened on Monday morning. And then guess what happens? Well, oil drops again. But guess what? They got ears too. They got ears too. And they listen and they go, wait, so Donald Trump lied? Oh, so they didn't have talks? Okay, oil goes back up. It goes back up. And now you got Americans that are ticked off. They are royally mad because the gas is too damn high. I got a text message from a comrade showing me the prices, the gas prices in Tampa. It's over $4 a gallon in Florida. Just 2 weeks ago, we were below $3. And now we're over $4 a gallon in gas. It's costing us so much more now. And it's also costing us in food, because how do you transport food? How do you transport goods from place to place? You need fuel to do that. So now our food's going to become more expensive. Our utilities are going to become more expensive. Everything is powered by petroleum. Everything is powered by oil in our society. So when that goes up in price, everything goes up. And now because of that, because of what Donald Trump has done, he is now tearing apart the United States economically. And the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, it's not completely closed. It's only open to countries that are not participating in this war. It's open to countries like China that are not on the side of the United States. And they can pass through. They're good. They can go through the Strait of Hormuz, no problem. But if you are an American vessel or you're part of the West and you're trying to get through there, guess what? They got the missiles for you. They do. You're not allowed to go 1 inch. Not one drop of oil will ever leave that area until the United States gives into the demands of Iran. And all the balls are in Iran's court right now. They're making demands. And guess what? It is just like Cat Williams' character in Friday After Next. Soon as he got a hold of that wrench, guess what? Got him right there. Subdued. Said, you're going to do what I say. Because you're not going to be attacking me no more. Just because you think I'm smaller. Y'all remember that? Y'all know that part in the bathroom with Terry Crews' character. Yeah, that part. And so Iran said to the United States, don't be sorry, ho, be careful. They're not careful. And now look at the rest of the world. And the de-dollarization is actually accelerating even more. Even more. Because, and Donald Trump just showed how much of a coward he is. He blinked. He blinked. And there's really no turning back now. None at all. So let me make sure this video. Okay. Let me share details here. More details, especially about what's going on. I want to share this with you guys because the United States should have taken the deals that it did. Should have, but they didn't. All right. So for Ken Gozukar, shout out to him. Let's take a listen to this.
David? And there was one development yesterday. It builds on reporting MS Now had earlier. Iran offered to give away all of its enriched uranium during the peace talks. And hours later, the U.S. started dropping bombs. And The Guardian broke yesterday that there were British officials, the British National Security Advisor was present in Geneva during that last round of talks. The British were surprised by the Iranian offer. They thought it was credible. They thought the talks should continue. And the British were shocked when the Trump administration started bombing Iran hours later.
Oh. And this is what I meant by the United States kept reneging on their promise, reneging on the deals. Iran basically said, all right, fine. We're good. The United States said no. Because it was never about, look, guys, come here. You guys know. It was never about nuclear power. It was never about nuclear weapons. If Iran had a nuclear weapon right now, the United States would not be hitting them right now. Why haven't the United States hit China or North Korea or Russia? Why? Got to think about it. Got to think. Why wouldn't the United States hit another nuclear superpower? Because they have deterrence. That's what it is. Say it with deterrence. I feel like a choir director now. And that's what it is. And I don't want anybody to have any of these kind of weapons. I do not want it. But I think it is deeply hypocritical for the United States and Israel to say, oh, well, these countries shouldn't have them. I'm like, then why do you have them? Oh, well, we got to protect ourselves. Well, I guess then that applies to every country, right? I think it should be equal across the board. I think nobody should have them. And I think the person who has used them before in the civilian population should be the first to put them down. Am I wrong? Like, it's crazy to me. The only country to use a nuclear weapon on a civilian population is now trying to tell everybody, oh, well, you shouldn't be using this. And people go, okay, well, why don't you get rid of yours first? Oh, no, we can't do that. We got to protect ourselves. What? Lead by example. What in the world is wrong? But the United States is interested in that. It's about holding the world hostage so that you can take everything that they have. And that's what it's all about. That's what imperialism is. I want to share a little bit more with you guys because Americans are pissed. They are frustrated. They are angry. Here is this woman's frustration. And I bet you a lot of y'all feel the same frustration. She is hot mad. She is, boy, look, I'm glad she don't have no boxing gloves on because I'd be trying to cover my face. Because she is mad. You, girl.
You motherfuckers! Y'all done raised fuel prices up! Fuel prices is up! I just got back into the business and y'all done raised the freaking fuel prices up! Y'all done raised the prices up $5 a gallon for fuel? Are y'all crazy? Are y'all crazy? What is going on? What is going on? I'm tired of this. I'm tired. I just got back into trucking and y'all done raised the fuel prices so high? Are y'all crazy? This shit don't make no sense. This don't make no fucking sense. I'm pissed. And I'm going off for all of y'all. It's all of y'all fault. Dang. Like, y'all see this sign? This sign says $4.99 a gallon. This is what trucking has come to? Shit. You motherfuckers. Y'all done raised fuel prices up. Fuel prices.
How many of y'all feel the same way that she felt? How many of y'all feeling the same way she feels right now? I bet you felt some catharsis hearing her rant and rave about the gas prices right now. And fully justified. If you feel this way, you're fully justified in feeling that way. Baby, feel all the feelings. Yes. Feel the feelings, because I'm going to tell you right now, the problem isn't whether it's Democrats or Republicans, because let's be real, they both wanted to bomb Iran. It's just the Democrats wanted to go through the proper channels to do it. They still want the same end result, though, right? So it's both parties that are involved in this. Remember, Kamala Harris actually talked about Iran being the #1 enemy in the region, despite signing the Iran nuclear deal back in 2015 with Obama. And then who ripped up the deal? Donald Trump. A new one could have been written. Look, they were willing to basically give the West everything they wanted. But it was never about having a nuclear weapon. It was always about the resources under the feet of who is in Iran. The United States didn't have a problem with Iran when they installed the Shah against the will of the people. They didn't have a problem with Iran then, right? When they had a monarchy, just like the Gulf monarchies. And people want to talk about, oh my God, Iran is so oppressive. Have you seen Saudi Arabia? Iran's democracy. Have you seen Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia is a monarchy. They have a king. And yet you guys want to talk about what Iran is or is not? The only reason why Iran is going through what it goes through is because they won't play the ball of imperialism. That's why. And who's paying the price now for what the United States is doing? You, me, your mama, your daddy, your granddaddy, and your grandma. Everybody and their mama is paying the price for this. This is why milk and eggs are so high right now. Look, I put out a video a few days ago. Do I still have that receipt? I think did I throw it away? I hope not. If I did, it's whatever. But I put out a video a couple days ago. I spent almost $16 for 5 Hass avocados and 2 pounds of broccoli. Almost $16 for 5 avocados and 2 pounds of broccoli. 36 ounces of broccoli and 5 avocados. Almost $16. And that's because on top of inflation, which is really corporate price gouging, then you have the gas prices raising the price of all these things. And then even on top of that, you have the tariffs, because those avocados came from Mexico. This is why I wish I had me an avocado tree. But I live in an apartment, so here you go. So this is what it is. But I want to bring this out too. Speaking of food, I want to share this as well. I heard that this video was from a few days ago. And if it's just from a few days ago, I'll still show it because it's still applicable for today. But this is a video out of the Strait of Hormuz. All these things you see in the ocean Those are ships. Look at that. They're just waiting to pass by in the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, there you go. And some of those ships that are waiting, some of those have something essential in them that contributes to our food supply. So I'm going to share that aspect as well, because this is something that has come out within the last day or so. So let me share this as well. This is out of the Financial Times. So I want you guys to see how serious this really is. And this is actually says Hormuz fertilizer block will upend world's food production. Any ceasefire negotiations must include humanitarian carve-out for such shipments. Let's take a look at this. It says the Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. 25% of the world's traded oil passes through it. Everyone has been focused on that, but the strait also carries the fertilizer components that underpin roughly half of the world's food supply. And Iran has in effect closed it in response to U.S.-Israeli strikes on its territory during the 4-week window when farmers in the northern hemisphere applied nitrogen to their crops. Because the Gulf states account for 49% of globally traded urea and 30% of ammonia, perishable contributors to the nitrogen cycle that make high-yield agriculture possible. When that supply chain stops, the effects accumulate quietly in soil chemistry and planting decisions over the months that follow. Corn planting estimates are already being revised down as farmers rotate towards soybeans, which don't require added nitrogen. That rotation locks in yield losses before a single seed goes in the ground. Now at Ukraine, before, oh, hang on, let me refresh. Okay. Now, at Ukraine before the strike on Iran, the global food system was already running on reduced redundancy. Ukraine and Russia still represent about a quarter of global wheat trade, and some 400 million people across the Middle East and in East Africa have been absorbing that supply shock for 3 years. The Hormuz closure isn't breaking a healthy system, it's breaking one that was already compromised. So on top of this war that has been happening within the Russia-Ukraine proxy war that the United States has been conducting, remember they were talking about how that area of the world is considered the world's breadbasket. And so since that has been stunted as far as, you know, grain coming across and also fertilizer coming through, well, guess what? Now, because you already have that, this closing of the Strait of Hormuz, or I should say selective passage from the Strait of Hormuz by Iran, because they're allowing some ships to pass, but it depends on if they are on the side of the United States and Israel or if they are on the side of multipolarity. And so because of that, they're saying, you know what? No, we're not going to allow these other groups to pass through. And this also includes the components, major components, when it comes to fertilizing our crops in order to feed us. And so this has already been hamstrung so far. Says the agricultural damage clock runs in weeks. Winter wheat across the US, Europe, and parts of the Middle East need its final nitrogen application in the next 3 to 4 weeks. The food security clock runs in months. Most important nations carry, most import-dependent nations carry enough grain reserves to absorb a short disruption, not enough to outlast the season. The Horn of Africa is already on the edge of famine. So, of course, you have Eritrea, Ethiopia that are going through a lot of this. Djibouti said this pushes it over. Finally, the geopolitical clock runs in years. Food price spikes above 30 to 40% have a documented correlation with political instability in a fragile states within 6 to 18 months of price trigger. So, what should the Trump administration do? It should insist that any ceasefire negotiations include explicit straight transit guarantees and humanitarian carve-out for fertilizer and grain shipments as preconditions, not as afterthoughts. U.S. International Development Finance Corporation's $20 billion facility addresses war risk for shipping, but not the environmental and pollution liability that now attaches to any vessel transiting a potentially mined waterway. Without the backstop model on the Terrorism Risk Insurance Act for Gulf environmental risk, the insurance market withdrawal is potentially self-sustaining, independent of military conditions. So that gap needs to close before the markets reopens, not afterwards. Congress, meanwhile, should consider emergency authorization for strategic fertilizer reserves, modeled on the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Urea and ammonia are not on the federal critical minerals list. No strategic reserve exists for them, and no emergency authority clearly covers them. Congress should fix both. This is huge. We have no strategic reserves for our food. We have just been running high on the hog this entire time. There are no strategic reserves, meaning if we run out of food, we are screwed. We import so much food. Yes, America, we import a lot of food because we don't build anything anymore. The United States, through capitalism, has backed itself into a corner. Because when it comes to industrialization, that's when we were at our strongest and most self-sustaining. And because we now handed that over to other countries in the global south, now we do not have that strength. So all they need to do is proverbially cut off the oxygen in that airway by just doing a little pinch. And the next thing you know, we're suffocating. And that's it. It is wild, man. So the advanced emergency funding from the World Food Program also needs to move now before price transmission reaches retail markets in those countries least able to absorb it. The harder problem is that the operational infrastructure to execute this response has been substantially dismantled. USAID, so United States Agency for International Development, and its NGO partner networks cannot be reconstituted on a 90-day timeline. Direct WFP funding, bilateral agreements, and private sector logistics are all that's left. They can move, but only if someone is building a timeline that shows what happens if they don't. If fertilizer isn't moving through the Strait of Hormuz in 2 weeks' time, we won't be debating anymore. We'll be sending in aid. If it's not moving in 4 weeks, we'll be managing instability. It is time to act on the agricultural calendar, not the diplomatic one. And so this is what Donald Trump has put us in. He put us in danger of having food loss. And unfortunately, because of the system that we live in, because we have for-profit companies that run our agriculture, he who has the most money will get the most food. And so we'll have enough food for a little while, but then once those shelves start coming empty, because it takes time for those crops to develop. Once you stop that cycle, you have to churn slowly to get it back up again. Problem is, they need that fertilizer. And half of it comes through the Strait of Hormuz. And because of Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio's hubris and Benjamin Netanyahu, aka Beelzebub, well, guess what? Now, not only their people in Israel are going to be starving, but also people, maybe even people here in the United States may start starving, because even if we have the money, we won't have the food. And you can't eat dollar bills. It's getting ridiculous, y'all. It is getting crazy. And so this is one of the reasons why I think this is so important. Why we keep talking about mutual aid, y'all. And why we keep talking about having groups that are focused on learning how to, plant our own food and make our own crops, because ultimately that's what's happening, man. It's getting crazy out there. So I want to share this. And this is really going to be a good synopsis as well. And then I want to get my final thoughts from Danny Jaybefaunt. So this is from Carl Jha. He said, accurate recap of the U.S.-Israel-Iran war so far. So, Syed Abbas Aragchi, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. So he's a foreign minister for Iran. He said the Strait of Hormuz is not closed. Ships hesitate because insurers feel the war of choice you initiated, not Iran. Secondly, no insurer and no Iranian will be slaved by more threats. Try respect. And the next one is freedom of navigation cannot exist without freedom of trade. Respect both or expect neither. So that's basically what Iran is saying. Like, either give us some respect, or if respect our autonomy, respect our self-determination, or you're going to continue in this. And get your bases out. Leave us alone. It is getting crazy out here, man. And they're trying to push us into this war of attrition that will only harm us. And let me share this too. So, shout out to Bark Meta for this. This is pretty comprehensive. It says, let me explain what just happened. 5 minutes before the president announced to halt on attacks to Iran, someone placed a $1.5 billion bet on stocks going up and dumped $192 million in oil. 5 minutes. These trades were 4 to 6 times larger than anything else in the entire market. Whoever did this wasn't guessing. You don't risk $1.5 billion on a hunch. There was zero public indication this announcement was coming. No leaks, no press, nothing. The only people who knew were in the room when the decision was made. Someone in that room picked up a phone. And within minutes, they made more money than most Americans will earn in 1,000 lifetimes. In a single trade, on a war that cost you $4+ a gallon in gas. and $16 billion in tax dollars. American citizens funded this war. Politicians are profiting from it. This isn't the first time. Every major announcement from this administration had massive suspicious trades right before it dropped. Tariff reversals, policy shifts, war decisions. This is the most blatant insider trading operation in the history of American politics. It's not even close. And it's happening over and over again in broad daylight. You would go to federal prison for trading on a tip from your cousin. These people are front-running war decisions with billion-dollar bets, and nobody will ever ask a single question. Nobody will be investigated. Nobody will be charged. By tomorrow, this will be buried under the next satisfying headline, just like the last time and in the time before that. The game is rigged, and they're not even trying to hide it anymore. So, yeah. So I think that's from a movie, because that looks like Matthew McConaughey. But it's crazy, man. Look at this. Unusual whales. Said breaking just 5 minutes before Trump's announcement to halt the attacks in Iran, massive trades reportedly hit the market. In one move, $1.5 billion in S&P 500 futures was bought, while $192 million in oil futures was sold. These orders were 4 to 6 times larger than anything else at the time. The traders seemingly made huge gains. Unusual. So this also, they're making money off of this war. And what's happening to us? And so Trump blinks and lies. And then what happens to us? We're left out to dry. And so this is why I think it's so important that we keep an eye exactly what's happening on the ground in Iran, because this is going to influence housing. This is going to influence healthcare. This is going to influence so many dimensions of our lives, to the point where if we, like, for instance, trying to get to work, good luck, because it's going to be more expensive to get to work, even if you have a car. If you have to take a bus, maybe, just maybe, hopefully, that won't have that big of an impact, but it may just. There's so many different issues. And there's one more thing that I also want to share too, because this is something I think that you guys need to see as well. Make sure I get this. No. A couple of things, actually. But here we go. So here is this article here. It says the Iran war halts Qatar helium output, threatening global tech supply chains. It says Iran's attack this week on Qatar's natural gas exports facility threatens to disrupt not just world energy markets, but also global technology supply chains, because the helium it produces is crucial for a range of advanced industries. Best known as the gas that makes party balloons float, helium is also a key input in chip making, space rockets, and medical imaging. Qatar supplies a third of the world's helium, according to U.S. Geological Survey, but the nation has had to halt production shortly after the war erupted 3 weeks ago. The latest Iranian strikes against the region's energy-producing infrastructure have added to supply worries, with Qatar's state-owned gas company saying it would crimp helium exports by 14%. So, helium is a byproduct of natural gas production when it's separated out by cryogenic distillation. Qatar, which sits on the world's biggest single natural gas field, produces about 30% of global helium supply, according to U.S. Geological Survey. Gosh, I can't talk today. Qatar's helium is produced at its Ras Laffan facility, the world's largest liquefied natural gas plant. But state-owned energy company Qatar Gas halted production of LNG and associated products on March 2nd because of Iran's drone attacks, and 2 days later declared force majeure, meaning it was unable to supply contracted customers due to circumstances beyond its control. Now, why did Qatar get attacked, you may ask? Well, because Qatar, being one of the Gulf states, has a U.S. military base that was also attacking Iran. So Iran attacked the military base in Qatar. It's not Iran's fault that Qatar had a U.S. military base that wanted to be aggressive towards Iran. Qatar should have never had that base in there to begin with, but they decided to have it because, well, they got fat off of their association with the United States. Shall we continue? Yes, we shall. It says after Ras Laffan was hit once again by more Iranian strikes on Wednesday and Thursday, Qatar Gas reported extensive damage that will take years to repair and cut annual helium exports by 14%. So helium prices on the rise. Spot prices for helium have doubled since the crisis erupted and will probably rise further. Spot trading only accounts for about 2% of the total market in normal times. Helium is a thinly traded commodity and is mostly sold through long-term contracts. Now, let's get to this part. It's not just for party balloons. Helium is essential for manufacturing semiconductors, the cutting-edge chips used for artificial intelligence models produced in Asian fabrication plants. It's also great at conducting or transferring heat, making it ideal for rapid cooling. Now, by the way, one of the main gases in the sun is helium, by the way. So we see the effects of helium every day, especially when we go outside. But it says chip makers use it to cool wafers, disc of silicon printed with tiny electronic circuits. Helium is used during etching process. Okay. Now I want to get to this part, which is also very important. The medical industry uses helium to cool superconducting magnets powering magnetic reconnaissance imaging machines, MRIs. The space industry uses helium to purge rocket fuel tanks, a demand that is expected to grow because of more frequent launches by companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin. So here's the thing. If you need to get your MRI, it's going to cost you more. And you may have to wait longer. So this is why I say it's all connected. All of it. And so this is why I say that, some people may say, we need to not talk about foreign policy as much. Well, foreign policy is affecting us domestically. So this is one of the reasons why it has to be talked about. And I think it's important that we also show that wars like this will continue as long as this system continues. And, well, it won't happen if this system no longer continues. But that's a conversation for another day. All right, go ahead and give a like to the stream. We're about to head on out of here. Let us do this. Let us go into the chat. And let me check to see if we have any more rants. Why are you doing a security verification? Okay. Okay. So I'll catch those on the regular chat. Let me see. Wait, what did I just do? Okay. Let me check the kick chat to see if we have any gift subs. I think we're good. All right. Yeah, we are good on the kick side. The kick side, the crip side, whatever side you want it to be, but as long as it's on my side. All right. All right, everybody. Now, you can say whatever you want, Roger. Now, I'm gonna be very measured. You can have salt, pepper, butter, cheese, shrimp. You can have your grits savory. And I'm all cool with that. But I can also have my grits sweet. You can do both. You can do sweet, you can do the savory. Grits is a cereal. It is made from corn. Okay? Like, and people are like, oh man, you're eating it like cream of wheat. Yeah. You can. But here's the thing, right? You put sugar on your wheat checks when you eat it. But when you have corn checks, do you put sugar and milk on that? Yeah. Why? Because you can. Right? Because that's how it's made to be eaten. But with grits, you can eat it savory and you can eat it sweet. All these people going, oh, well, sugar doesn't belong on grits. Nah. Because here's the thing, right? Some of y'all will eat cornbread and put some honey and butter on that, and you'll be like, oh, it's cornbread. And yet, you mean to tell me that grits that comes from corn, you guys don't eat that sweet? I'm going to blow your minds right now. You can also eat rice either sweet or savory. And don't tell me you don't know that, because you know people who eat rice pudding. So you can eat rice sweet or savory. You can do the same thing with corn. So if you want to do grits, you can eat grits savory or sweet. My preferred is with sugar, butter, and milk. If you want to, you can add a little bit of cinnamon. I like to add a little bit of maple. That's just me. But it is a hot cereal. Go ahead and Google it. It's a cereal. Just like wheat and rice can be considered a cereal. Roger, come on, man. Just try it once. Try it once. Right? And if you don't like it, it's just a preference thing. Not everybody likes Scrapple. I'm from Jersey, so, you know, Scrapple is the bomb. But, you know what I mean? Anyway. And Roger's not the only person I have this argument with. I also have this argument with Savvy, because we use arguing about sugar and grits too. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so Edward says Trump likes to use his playbook straight out of the WWE, just attack Iran after saying that will be a ceasefire for 5 days. Iran fought back by bombing Israel. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, Bryce said gas is about $5 in Vegas. Oh, snap. Man, it is going up. Jacqueline asks, I hear that there's no income tax in Florida. No, there isn't. But how much hidden taxes are there, such as property taxes on the U.S. or version of value-added tax? Property taxes, I'm not as up to speed on because I don't own a home, but I hear is kind of substantial, but they're trying to get rid of it. But yeah, there is no state income tax. So it makes it more difficult for us to be able to afford social welfare programs because, you know, Florida as the state is a currency user. So you need that currency from taxation in order to be able to afford these programs. But we don't have a state income tax. So, and people are like, oh, they get to have more money. But at the same time, it's like for the people who need, you know, social welfare, it's not readily available for the rest of us. You see, Jacqueline says, was Don Corleone the one played by Al Pacino or the one played by Marlon Brando? Marlon Brando. Yeah. Now, Al Pacino played the son. You see, Roger says it's time for us to holler at Derek Bailey of Derek Automotive. This might be an opportunity to expand beyond Atlanta into other major cities, partnering with Worker Co-op authorized service members. Matter of fact, bring his website up. Let's steer some business towards that Friedman owner and stay away from Tesla. Yeah. It's crazy, man. I mean, yeah. I'm a big fan of especially like mass public transit, but I mean, the problem also is like, and yes, the way the cars from Derek Automotive is really good because that saves on electricity as well. And so, yeah, it literally charges the car as it goes, which is pretty great technology that they came up with. Aura says, part of me is unfortunately used to those prices, basically the boiling frog analogy. You know what? You got a strong point there, too. Yeah. Mary Ploppin says, you don't own anyone in Florida growing. Oh, you don't know anyone in Florida growing avocados? Make some connections. Yeah, I need to make some connections. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I need to go out to the street with some fishnet stockings and show a little leg, you know. Hey, you guys got any avocados? Let me stop. Sean says gas in Cali was originally to be $8. Now, according to my own mother, it's going to be up to 10. Yeah. And it was like that after the 2008 crisis, the housing crisis. Yeah, I think it went up to about 10. It was like 10.50, something like that. It was crazy. Simple and Dalapado says Atseco Andromeda. I don't know what that is. Well, I know the Andromeda Galaxy, but I never heard of Atseco. Bad Wolf says it's time to co-op your community and govern yourselves. No one is coming to save you. You don't need a state to get there and let these people kick you. As I was reminded this week, have your First Amendment. If someone tries to take from you, here's your second. I mean, you got a point there. Rice pudding, fried rice, chicken pot pie, apple pie. Love me some Scrapple. Yep, there you go. There you go. Roger says, I don't care what you put on grits as long as you don't call my profile pic cream of wheat, man. It's a good thing you don't have any gray hair, Roger, because then I start calling you Uncle Ben. Woo! Almost coughed up a lung there, but it's all good. All right. Now, I have to get going. It is my time. But guys, I cannot wait to have more of a conversation with you a little bit later. As far as what I have going on in the next week, let me see. Yeah, so for the next week, I will be doing news stories. That'll be, next week will be the 31st. Last day of March. Whew, time flies. But guys, I don't have a particular funny video to share at the end right now. I try to have something fun so that we can laugh together, but I was lax into getting that. So I'm sorry. But it's always good to see you guys, and I encourage you guys to continue to support independent media. There are so many people right there that are doing the damn thing. They're doing great work out there. People who I still have in my orbit. Please continue to support them as well. And also, if you guys know of smaller channels, right? And by smaller channels, I'm talking about not just mine, but also channels that are smaller than mine. If they put out videos and clips, and you find that there's value in those, don't forget to use the hype feature as well as the like button, right? Because this helps them to be able to garner more attention so that they can grow and inform more people. Because I think that's important, because we got to support independent media, and because the corporate media is trying to get into our space now, and it's like we build our own table, and now they're trying to come on our table when they denied us over and over, and it's weird, because it's like, wait, you guys didn't want us at your table in the first place, and now you guys are saying, oh well, we want to be at your table. Like, no, get out of here, get back into your $1 million studios, your mic'd up studios, and your $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 desks with your premium 4K cams and your premium lighting with your makeup artists and all that, and your hair people, and keep reading the teleprompter, right? Don't come in, don't try to move into our space. And by the way, baby, this ain't no studio, this ain't no green screen, this is a bedroom. All right. This is a grassroots operation. By grassroots, I mean the people that you see watching, they're the ones that support me. The people scrolling at the bottom of the screen, they're the ones that support me. I have no support from anybody else. Grassroots all day long. So the thing is like, please support independent media. That's how we're able to stay sustained in this market. So thank you so very much, guys. And so that's the end of my stream. Thank you so very much for everybody for tuning in. Water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Do all the things if you got them. And also, please make sure to support the people in your life who are going through a lot. We're going to start seeing a whole lot more pain, especially among the working and poor class. And please continue to not only keep them in your thoughts, but also be kind to one another, be friendly to one another, acknowledge people's existence. If you see somebody that's homeless, even if you don't have any money, your kindness costs nothing. A smile, a hello, a good morning doesn't cost anything. Be safe, but continue to show humanity to people who humanity is not shown to. All right. I love you guys for watching. Mwah, forehead kisses. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you'd like to see any more, you can look here. Mwah, forehead kisses.